My phone buzzed at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that would change everything. I was sitting in my home office, reviewing trust fund documents for the monthly family meeting, when Sarah's name lit up my screen. Strange. She never called during her spa appointments. "Hey, babe," I answered, expecting her usual rushed voice, asking me to pick up dry cleaning or reschedule dinner reservations. Silence. Then laughter, not directed at me, but floating from somewhere else entirely. God, you should see the look on Mrs. Patterson's face. Sarah's voice came through, distant and tinny. She'd butt-dialed me. "This mud wrap costs more than most people make in a week." Another voice joined hers. Male, smooth, familiar. Derek Whitman from the country club. The finance guy who always wore suits that cost more than my truck. "Speaking of money," Derek said, and I could practically hear his smirk. "How much longer do you have to play the devoted wife?" My blood went cold. I should have hung up, should have pretended this never happened. Instead, I grabbed my phone's recording app and hit record. "Oh, please," Sarah laughed. That particular laugh she used when she thought she was being clever. "Our marriage? It's awful. Michael's terrible in bed, completely clueless about what women actually want. But his family's money? That's worth enduring the boredom." The words hit like physical blows. I'd suspected something was off. The late nights, the distance, the way she'd started criticizing everything about me. But hearing it laid out so casually, so cruelly, was something else entirely. "The prenup, though," Derek said. "That's ironclad, right? Your lawyer checked? Please." Michael's too stupid to have thought of the adultery clause seriously. He probably figured I'd never cheat on him. Poor, naive Michael. Her voice dripped with condescension. "Besides, he's so trusting. He'll never find out. And even if he did, he wouldn't have the spine to do anything about it." "What about his family? They're not exactly pushovers." "His parents? They tolerate me because they think I make their precious son happy. Once I have enough evidence of his inadequacies, I'll file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Maybe throw in some emotional neglect. I'll get enough to start fresh with you." They spent another 10 minutes planning their future, my future apparently, discussing which of my family's assets would be easiest to claim, how long they'd wait after the divorce to go public with their relationship, even what they'd do with the lakeside house. "He's so pathetic," Sarah concluded. "Sometimes I catch him looking at me like he actually thinks I love him. It's almost sad." The call ended with them making plans to meet at Derek's penthouse that evening. I sat in my office for a long time, staring at my phone, the recording app still open, the file saved and backed up to 3 different cloud services. Sarah thought I was stupid, spineless, pathetic. She was about to learn just how wrong she could be. I'd grown up in this house, learned the family business from my grandfather, understood how old money worked, not flashy, not obvious, but absolutely ruthless when necessary. My great-grandfather had built this fortune by being underestimated. Apparently, it was a family tradition. I called my nephew Jake, a college sophomore who could hack the Pentagon if he put his mind to it. "Uncle Mike, what's up?" "I need a favor, Jake. Can you clean up an audio file, make sure it's crystal clear?" "Sure, but..." "And Jake, this stays between us for now." An hour later, I had a pristine recording of my wife and her lover planning my destruction. I also had a plan of my own. Sarah came home at 7, same as always, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably been on Derek's skin hours earlier. "How was the spa?" I asked, setting down her favorite wine. "Relaxing. You know how these treatments are, boring but necessary." She smiled that practiced smile I'd once thought was genuine. "How was your day, honey?" "Educational," I said, raising my glass. "Absolutely educational." She had no idea the wire had been tapped, but she was about to find out that underestimating Michael Harrison was the biggest mistake of her life. The next morning, I called my mother. "Michael, darling," she answered on the first ring. "Margaret Harrison didn't believe in small talk." "What's wrong? Why would something be wrong?" "Because you're calling at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday. You either need bail money or you're getting divorced." My mother had always been direct. It came with running a family foundation worth more than some small country's GDP. She'd also never particularly liked Sarah, though she'd been too polite to say so directly. "Actually, I was hoping to host a family dinner this weekend. Nothing fancy, just the usual crowd." "Including Sarah?" "Especially Sarah." There was a pause. My mother had spent 67 years reading between lines. "I'll bring the good china," she said finally. And Michael, whatever you're planning, make sure it's airtight. I spent the rest of the week playing the perfect, oblivious husband. I complimented Sarah's new dress, the one she'd worn to Derek's apartment, according to the private investigator I'd hired Wednesday morning. I asked about her work, her friends, her plans for the weekend. A family dinner? She said when I mentioned it. Michael, you know how your parents feel about me. They love you, I lied smoothly. Besides, it's been too long since we've all been together, she agreed, probably figuring it was easier than arguing. Sarah had always been good at playing roles when it suited her. Friday evening, I met my best friend Tommy at his boxing gym. Tommy Kowalski had been NYPD for 15 years before opening the gym, and he still had the instincts of a detective. You look like hell, he said, wrapping my hands for a session with the heavy bag. Thanks for the pep talk. I'm serious, Mike. What's eating you? I told him everything, the recording, the investigation, the dinner party. Tommy listened without interrupting, his face getting harder with each detail. Jesus, Mike, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be ready. Ready for what? To watch the show. Saturday arrived with perfect autumn weather, the kind of day that made our lakeside estate look like something from a magazine. Sarah spent 2 hours getting ready, choosing an outfit that probably cost more than most people's rent. I want to make a good impression, she said, adjusting her necklace in the mirror. You always do, I replied, straightening my tie. The irony wasn't lost on me. The dining room was set for 12. My parents, my sister Catherine and her husband, my uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia, Tommy and his wife Jake, Sarah and myself. The good china, as promised, along with Crystal that had been in the family for 4 generations. Sarah played her part perfectly, the dutiful daughter-in-law, asking about my mother's charity work, complimenting my father's recent business acquisition, laughing at my uncle's terrible jokes. If I hadn't heard that recording, I might have believed the performance myself. Sarah, you look lovely, my mother said as we sat down for the main course. That's a beautiful dress. Thank you, Margaret. I got it for a special occasion. Oh? What occasion was that? Sarah's smile flickered for just a moment. Just, treating myself after a long week. My sister Catherine, who'd been filled in on the plan, smiled sweetly. It's important to celebrate the little things, don't you think, Michael? Absolutely, I agreed. In fact, I have something to celebrate tonight myself. I stood up, wine glass in hand, and the room fell quiet. Sarah looked up at me with what I'd once thought was love but now recognized as practiced affection. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Family means everything to me. Honesty, loyalty, trust, the bonds that hold us together through good times and bad. I paused, looking directly at Sarah. Recently, I've learned some things about the importance of those bonds, about what happens when they're tested. Sarah's face was still smiling, but something wary had crept into her eyes. In fact, I have something I'd like to share with all of you, something that really opened my eyes. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the room's sound system, a feature I'd had installed years ago for dinner party music. And this is a recording I made earlier this week. I think it speaks to the importance of knowing who we can really trust. I hit play. Sarah's voice filled the room, crystal clear thanks to Jake's audio work. Our marriage? It's awful. Michael's terrible in bed, completely clueless about what women actually want. But his family's money? That's worth enduring the boredom. The silence was deafening. Sarah's face went from confusion to horror to panic in the space of seconds. Michael, I can explain. Please don't interrupt, I said calmly. There's more. Derek's voice joined the chorus. What about his family? They're not exactly pushovers. His parents? They tolerate me because they think I make their precious son happy. Once I have enough evidence of his inadequacies, I'll file for divorce citing irreconcilable differences. Nah. My mother's face had gone stone cold. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might break teeth. Around the table, the faces of people who'd welcomed Sarah into their family for 3 years showed varying degrees of shock, disgust, and anger. The recording continued, laying out Sarah's plans in excruciating detail. When it ended, the silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, my mother spoke. You married my son for money. It wasn't a question. Margaret, please, let me explain. Explain what? My father's voice was quiet, which anyone who knew him understood was far more dangerous than shouting. Explain how you've been lying to our faces for 3 years. Explain how you've been cheating on our son while living in our house, eating at our table, taking our money. Sarah turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Michael, please, it's not what it sounds like. I was upset. I said things I didn't mean. Which part didn't you mean? I asked conversationally. The part where you called me terrible in bed? The part where you called me stupid and spineless? Or the part where you planned to take half of everything my family built? I love you, she whispered. No, I said, pulling out a folder that had been sitting beside my plate. You don't. But fortunately, we have a prenup that's very clear about adultery. And thanks to the private investigator I hired, we have plenty of evidence of that. I slid photos across the table. Sarah and Derek entering his building, leaving together, kissing in his car. The timestamps showed a pattern going back months. Security will escort you out, my father said, standing up. You have 1 hour to pack personal items. Everything else stays. You can't do this, Sarah said, her voice rising. I have rights. You signed them away, my sister said coldly, sliding legal documents across the table. Adultery clause, paragraph 12. You get nothing. Sarah looked around the table desperately, seeking any ally, any sympathy. She found none. Michael, please, we can work this out. Marriage counseling, whatever you want. I stood up, walked around the table, and leaned down to whisper in her ear. You called me pathetic. Said I'd never have the spine to do anything about it. I straightened up, looking down at her tear-stained face. How's that working out for you? 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Family retainers who'd been waiting for my signal. Ma'am, we need you to come with us, one said politely but firmly. Sarah was led out, still protesting, still pleading. The door closed behind her with a soft click. My mother raised her wine glass. To family, she said. To family, we echoed. But I knew this wasn't over. Sarah might have been defeated, but she wasn't destroyed, and neither was Derek. That would come next. The story broke on social media within hours. Not from me, I'd been careful to keep the high road, but from Mrs. Patterson, our neighbor who'd apparently been at the country club when Derek got drunk and started bragging about his conquest of the Harrison family fortune. By Monday morning, Harrison divorce was trending locally, and my phone was buzzing with calls from reporters, friends, and acquaintances I hadn't heard from in years. Sarah had been staying at Derek's penthouse, according to my sources, but that arrangement was apparently short-lived. Derek's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Jennifer Mills, had seen the social media buzz and decided to share some information of her own. Turned out Derek had a pattern. 3 previous relationships with married women, always targeting wives of wealthy men, always promising to rescue them from their loveless marriages. Jennifer had screenshots of texts, emails, even recordings of Derek bragging about his long-term investment strategy in other women's marriages. The country club was buzzing with gossip. My family's reputation, built over 4 generations, remained intact. If anything, people were sympathetic to the wronged husband, who'd handled his wife's betrayal with dignity and legal precision. Sarah's reputation was another matter entirely. I was at Tommy's gym Tuesday evening, working out my frustrations on the heavy bag, when she showed up. Michael! She screamed from the entrance, causing every head in the place to turn. We need to talk. She looked terrible, hair unwashed, makeup smeared, wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in at Derek's building that morning. Apparently things weren't going well in paradise. Ma'am, this is a private gym, Tommy said, moving to intercept her. I'm his wife. Ex-wife, I corrected, not stopping my workout. And technically, you're trespassing. She pushed past Tommy, marching toward me with fury in her eyes. You destroyed my life. I played a recording of your own words, I said, finally stopping and turning to face her. If that destroyed your life, maybe you should have chosen different words. The gym had gone completely quiet. 20 guys, mostly working class, mostly the type who didn't have much sympathy for cheating wives, were watching the show with obvious interest. You had me followed. You violated my privacy. I hired a private investigator to document your adultery, which was my legal right under our prenup. Privacy doesn't cover public places, hotel lobbies, and restaurant patios. I made mistakes, but I loved you. No. I pulled out my phone, opened the recording app. You want to talk about love? Let's talk about love. I played a snippet of the recording, her voice clear as day. Sometimes I catch him looking at me like he actually thinks I love him. It's almost sad. The gym erupted in murmurs and a few outright laughs. Sarah's face went red. That was taken out of context. Really? What context makes calling your husband pathetic and stupid sound loving? She lunged at me then, all fingernails and fury. I stepped aside easily. 3 years of boxing training had given me decent reflexes, and she stumbled into the ring ropes. Whoa there, lady, Tommy said, grabbing her arm. Time to go. Let go of me. Michael, you can't just throw away 3 years of marriage. Watch me, I said, pulling out another folder. Since you're here, you might want to see these. I showed her printouts of Derek's text messages to his ex-girlfriend, sent just 2 days after our dinner party. The Harrison thing is getting too hot. Might need to cut bait on the gold digger. She's needier than I expected. Sarah's face went white as she read. He's just scared. The publicity. He's using you, I said bluntly. Just like you used me. The difference is, I actually loved you. Loved. Past tense? Very past tense. She started crying then, ugly sobs that echoed through the gym. A few of the guys looked uncomfortable, but most just watched with the fascination of people witnessing a train wreck. I can change, she whispered. We can start over. I'll sign any prenup you want, give up any claim to your family's money. I don't want to lose you. For a moment, just a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the recording, the photos, the months of lies and manipulation. You already lost me, I said quietly. You lost me the moment you decided I was worth more as a bank account than as a husband. Tommy escorted her out while she was still sobbing. The gym slowly returned to normal, though I caught more than a few approving nods and pats on the shoulder. Damn, Mike, said Jerry, a construction foreman who'd been coming to the gym for years. That took balls. Just took evidence, I replied, but I was smiling. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Uncle Mike, you need to see this. The attached link led to a Facebook post from Derek's ex-girlfriend. She'd shared screenshots of his texts about Sarah, along with similar messages about his previous targets. The post had been shared over 200 times in the last hour. Another text, this one from my sister. Derek's been fired from the country club. Board met in emergency session. Apparently, targeting members' wives violates the morality clause in his contract. I was starting to feel something I hadn't experienced in months, genuine happiness. But the best was yet to come. By Thursday, Sarah was desperate. Derek had kicked her out of his penthouse after the social media firestorm cost him not just his country club job, but also his position at the investment firm where he'd worked. Apparently, wealthy clients didn't appreciate their financial advisors having a reputation for seducing married women. Sarah had tried staying with her friend Monica, the woman who'd been covering for her affair. But that arrangement fell apart when Monica's husband found out about her role in the deception. She'd tried going home to her mother, but Mrs. Chen had seen the news coverage and wasn't interested in harboring her daughter until the scandal died down. She was, according to my sources, living in a cheap motel and running out of money fast. That's when she made her biggest mistake. Friday night, the security system at our lakeside boathouse triggered an alert. I was at home, reviewing some trust fund documents, when my phone buzzed with the notification. Tommy, I called. You free for a little night fishing? It's 11 p.m., Mike. Best time to catch the really big fish. He understood immediately. Tommy had been itching for some action since the gym confrontation. We drove to the boathouse in my truck, headlights off, parking in the shadows of the old oak trees that lined the property. Through the windows, we could see flashlight beams moving around inside. How many? Tommy whispered. 3, looks like. Sarah, Derek, and probably Monica. What's the play? Let them find what they're looking for first. I'd been expecting this. Desperate people do desperate things, and Sarah was nothing if not predictable. She'd probably convinced Derek and Monica that there was evidence in the boathouse that could be used against me. Maybe financial documents, maybe something personal she could use for blackmail. What she didn't know was that I'd removed everything valuable weeks ago and replaced it with carefully planted evidence that would damn her even further. We waited 20 minutes, watching them search through old files and storage boxes. Finally, Sarah's voice carried through the night air. Found it, the trust fund documents. Perfect. Tommy and I slipped around to the back entrance. The boathouse was old but well-maintained, with multiple exits and plenty of hiding spots among the boat slips and equipment storage. Sarah, I called out, stepping into the main room with my phone's flashlight, illuminating the 3 intruders. Find what you were looking for? They spun around like guilty teenagers. Derek had a file folder in his hands. Monica was holding what looked like a laptop. and Sarah was clutching a stack of papers. Michael, Sarah tried to sound authoritative, but her voice cracked. We have evidence of your family's tax evasion, financial fraud. If you don't reinstate our marriage and drop the adultery claims, we'll go to the IRS. I laughed. Actually laughed. Those documents you're holding, they're fake, planted specifically for you to find. The color drained from her face. But the financial records are fabricated, made to look real enough to fool someone desperate enough to break into private property to steal them. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. I've been live streaming this whole conversation to my social media accounts. Say hello to your felony breaking and entering charges. Derek dropped the folder and bolted for the door. Tommy stepped into his path like a linebacker, and Derek bounced off him and stumbled backward into a boat slip. He came up soaking wet and furious. You can't prove we broke in, Monica said, trying to sound confident. We have keys. Keys you stole from Sarah's personal effects when she was still living here, you mean? I held up my phone again. Because I have security footage of Sarah giving them to you last week. That's conspiracy to commit burglary. Sarah was backing toward the water, the fake documents still clutched in her hands. Michael, please, I'm desperate. I have nothing left. No money, no job, no place to live. Derek won't even take my calls anymore. That's what happens when you burn bridges, I said coldly. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve this. You deserve exactly this, Tommy said, speaking for the first time. You cheated on a good man, tried to steal his family's money, and now you're breaking into his property. What did you think would happen? Derek, still dripping wet, tried to make another run for it. This time I was ready. I stepped aside and let him slip on the wet dock, sending him tumbling into another boat slip with a splash that echoed through the boathouse. Derek, I called out as he floundered in the water. Remember what you said about me not having the spine to fight back. He just glared at me, treading water. Monica, I continued, turning to Sarah's former friend. You want to explain to everyone watching why you helped cover up an affair? I was just being a good friend. You were being an accomplice. There's a difference. I walked over to where Derek's expensive suit jacket was lying on the dock and picked it up. Inside the pocket was his wallet, his keys, and his phone. Oops, I said, dropping the jacket into the water. Clumsy me. Derek's phone, his lifeline to whatever was left of his professional contacts, sank like a stone. You bastard, he screamed, trying to climb out of the water. Language, Derek. There are ladies present. Well, allegedly. Sarah was crying again. But these weren't the manipulative tears from the gym. These were the tears of someone who'd finally realized that actions have consequences. The live stream is up to 3,000 viewers, I announced, checking my phone. Comments are not sympathetic. Turn it off, Sarah begged. Please, Michael. I'll disappear. I'll leave town, never bother you again. You should have thought of that before you broke into my property. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone, probably one of the live stream viewers, had called 911. Last chance, I told them. Full confession, on camera, or I let the police sort it out. Derek was the first to break. Hypothermia and social media humiliation had apparently worn down his resolve. Fine. Yes, we broke in. Yes, we were trying to find evidence to blackmail you with. Yes, Sarah's been cheating on you for months. And yes, I helped her plan to take your money in a divorce. Happy? Ecstatic, I said, still recording. Monica and Sarah followed with their own confessions, each trying to throw the others under the bus. By the time the police arrived, I had everything I needed on video. The three of them were arrested for breaking and entering, attempted theft, and conspiracy. The live stream, which had peaked at over 10,000 viewers, was automatically saved to my social media accounts. Feels good, doesn't it? Tommy asked, as we watched them being loaded into police cars. It feels like justice, I replied. But I wasn't done yet. The arrests made the local news. The live stream went viral. Sarah, Derek, and Monica became cautionary tales about the dangers of underestimating quiet, patient people. Sarah made bail after 3 days in jail, paid for by her mother, who flew in from California with a lawyer and a lot of angry words about family reputation. Derek's family disowned him entirely. Monica's husband filed for divorce. But the real finale came 2 weeks later, at the annual Lakeside Community Foundation fundraiser, the biggest social event of the year, held at the country club, attended by everyone who mattered in our little corner of the world. I'd bought a table for 12, and invited my entire family, plus Tommy and his wife, Jake and his girlfriend, and my new companion, a woman named Lisa Chen, no relation to Sarah's mother, who ran a nonprofit for underprivileged kids and had the most genuine smile I'd seen in years. Sarah showed up uninvited. She'd somehow gotten past security and was standing near the auction stage when I spotted her. She looked better than she had at the boathouse. Clean clothes, fixed hair, makeup. But there was a desperate edge to her that everyone could see. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer was saying, "our next item is a weekend getaway to the Harrison family's private cabin in the mountains." That's when Sarah made her move. She pushed past the waitstaff and grabbed the microphone from the startled auctioneer. "I need to say something," she announced to the crowd of 300. "About Michael Harrison and his family." A murmur went through the room. My mother looked at me with raised eyebrows, but I just smiled and pulled out my phone. "Michael destroyed my life because I made one mistake," Sarah continued, her voice echoing through the room. "He had me followed, recorded private conversations, and turned my friends against me. He's not the victim here, I am." The crowd was listening with the fascination of people watching a car accident. I stood up slowly, straightening my tie. "Sarah," I called out, my voice carrying easily across the silent room. "Are you sure you want to do this? I'm sure I want people to know the truth about you." "The truth?" I walked toward the stage, still holding my phone. "Let's talk about truth." I reached the microphone and gently took it from her hands. She was shaking. Whether from nerves or anger, I couldn't tell. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, looking out at the crowd of familiar faces. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my wife was having an affair. Not through spying or surveillance, but through a simple accident. She butt-dialed me while discussing her plans with her lover. I held up my phone and connected it to the sound system. This is what I heard. Sarah's voice filled the room. "Our marriage? It's awful. Michael's terrible in bed, completely clueless about what women actually want. But his family's money? That's worth enduring the boredom." The crowd's murmur turned into gasps and whispers. Sarah's face went white. "There's more," I continued, letting the recording play. Derek's voice joined the chorus, then more of Sarah's commentary about my family, my intelligence, my worth as a human being. When it ended, the silence was deafening. "This woman," I said, gesturing to Sarah, "married me for money. She admitted it. She planned to divorce me and take half of everything my family built over 4 generations. She called me pathetic and stupid, said I'd never have the spine to fight back." I paused, looking directly at her. She was wrong. The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah tried to grab the microphone back, but security, real security this time, was already moving toward the stage. "I'm not finished," she screamed. "He's vindictive. He's cruel. He destroyed my life." "I played a recording of your own words," I said calmly. "If that destroyed your life, maybe you should have chosen different words." More applause. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Good for you, Mike." "Sarah," I continued, "you called me the villain in your story. You know what? I accept that role. I wear it better than you wore your mask of loving wife." I walked to the edge of the stage and looked down at her. "You wanted to know what I'm capable of when pushed too far? Now you know." Security escorted her out while she was still protesting. The fundraiser continued, and I ended up bidding successfully on a week-long vacation to Hawaii, a trip I planned to take with Lisa, who had watched the entire spectacle with a mixture of horror and admiration. "Remind me never to cross you," she whispered as we sat back down. "Don't marry me for money, and you'll be fine," I replied. The evening ended with record fundraising totals and more congratulations than I could count. Sarah's final public humiliation was complete. Her reputation in our community destroyed beyond repair. But I had one last surprise waiting. As the crowd was leaving, I noticed Derek lurking in the parking lot near Sarah's car, a beat-up Honda she'd bought with the last of her savings. He was apparently trying to convince her to leave town with him, start fresh somewhere else. I walked over to where my truck was parked, pulled out a key from my pocket, and approached Derek's new car, a cheap sedan he'd bought after his BMW was repossessed. In front of a crowd of departing guests, I keyed "Homewrecker" into the hood of his car, took a selfie with it, and posted it to social media with the caption, "Some people need visual reminders of who they really are." Derek came charging at me, but Tommy stepped between us, and Derek bounced off him like he had at the boathouse. "You want to press charges for vandalism?" I asked Derek. "Go ahead. I'll countersue for emotional distress, and we can have another very public trial where everyone gets to hear the recordings again." Derek deflated like a punctured balloon. Sarah tried one last appeal. Michael, please, I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but this has gone too far. I've lost everything. I looked at her for a long moment. Really looked at her. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of thinking I'd found my soulmate. 3 years of being played for a fool. You're right, I said finally. You have lost everything. Your husband, your home, your friends, your reputation, your future. Do you know why? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Because you forgot the most important rule of marriage. Don't bet against your spouse. When you decided to play games with my heart and my family's money, you made me your opponent. And Sarah? I leaned in close, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't lose. I walked away, Lisa's hand in mine, leaving Sarah and Derek standing in the parking lot, surrounded by the wreckage of their own making. Police cars were pulling up. Someone had called about the vandalism, but also about Derek's outstanding warrants for unpaid debts and Sarah's violation of her bail conditions by coming to the fundraiser. As we drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror, being handcuffed again under the bright lights of the country club parking lot. Do you feel bad for her? Lisa asked quietly. I thought about it for a moment. I feel bad for the man I used to be, I said finally. The one who trusted too easily and loved too completely. But Sarah? No. She made her choices. She called me pathetic and spineless, said I'd never fight back. She was wrong about that, just like she was wrong about everything else. Lisa squeezed my hand. What happens now? Now I start over. Smarter this time. Stronger. And with someone who sees me as more than a bank account. In the distance, sirens wailed as Derek and Sarah were taken away for the final time. The social media posts were already going viral again. By morning, their story would be a cautionary tale told across the internet. I'd started this as a victim of betrayal and manipulation. I was ending it as something else entirely. A man who'd learned that sometimes the only way to deal with people who see you as weak is to show them exactly how strong you can be. Sarah had called me the villain in her story. She was right about that, at least. But every villain is the hero of their own story, and this was mine. The revenge was complete. The humiliation was total. And for the first time in months, I was genuinely happy. Sarah had underestimated me one last time. It was a mistake she'd never get the chance to make again.